We are here to bring you everything and anything surrounding Porsche. I'm Mike.
I'm Aaron.
And this is PcarTalk. Welcome to another episode of PcarTalk. We are at Porsche Experience Center, Atlanta, and we have special guest Ray Shaffer on. He's been on the show before, but we're going to get into a deep dive today, and thanks for spending some time with us, Ray.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course, and getting to see this beautiful facility and get to see what Porsche Classic does. So we're going to kind of get into that deep dive today and talk about the details. And I know we talked a little bit offline about some of the stuff that that Porsche does, and we have that education, but we want to kind of educate our audience about what goes on here and all that. So let's start off with some of the things that kind of we talked about before as far as recommissioning, because we've touched on it before on a show, but we haven't really got into the deep dive, and it sounds better when it comes from somebody who's actually here day to day and gets to see everything. It kind of goes into that. So if you don't mind, and I know you've told the story 100 times, but could you share that story?
101 days.
Yeah. Could you go 101 for us right now on that? No, but in all seriousness, please tell us how the Oak Green CGT came to be and how you guys did such a beautiful job and how you guys worked with the client and how all of that kind of came, because it's such a beautiful thing. I just want to hear it from you.
It is a beautiful thing, and I don't mind talking about it because it was, and it's appropriate that we talk about it here because this is where it was born, right up in restaurant 356 off to my right. Yeah. So we were having lunch with the new vehicle delivery customer who I had met recently, and he's got a wonderful collection of cars, a lot of the newer vehicles, and we were having the conversation about all those cars and his new car. And then, of course, as is typical in the conversations that car people have, and I use car guys to mean
I think
guys and gals.
We're guilty of it too, but we don't mean it that way.
Right.
We understand what you mean.
Right, because we get to enjoy everyone. So we were having the conversation as is typical, and of course it turned towards what is the one car that isn't in your collection yet. And for him, that car was the Carrera GT. It's sort of the car that really inspired a lot because when he was a kid, that was the car that was on his bedroom wall or wallpaper on the computer, if you will, from being a new vehicle. And it's hard to believe, but in 2016, that car became an official Porsche Classic car because it was 10 years out of series production. The last one was made for the European market in 2006. So in 2016, the manufacturing production side, the responsibility goes away from their department and it moves over to Porsche Classic. We become responsible for maintaining the parts supply, as well as any of the upkeep with any warranty information, service information, and everything that keeps the car on the road and
so
running.
That torch gets passed to you basically at that decade mark is
every
what
year.
happens.
Yeah, so if you know the last year of production of your favorite Porsche, you can pretty much figure out when it's going to become an official classic, right?
You're probably looking at the list, you're like, Carrera GT? No, not yet.
Yeah, hard to believe. So we were talking about that. So we said, well, if you could have ordered it, which one would you have gotten? The silver, the black, the red one, the Fayence yellow? And he goes, well, those are all great colors. He said, but I have a different idea for what I would do. And so we talked about that. And it started to make sense. It's like, well, it's our responsibility now. We restore cars, but it just seemed like the Carrera GT was too new to need a restoration. It's not like something you're finding in a barn. Yeah. Right?
If you were, it's in bad shape.
Yeah, exactly.
Like some of the cars that are around us, but
it wasn't like a clapped out DE track car or something, right? That's not what's happening.
No, not at all. But so it made more sense. It was like along the lines of, well, we could recommission the car. And it became something that really only maybe a manufacturer could do because we created the car in the first place. So to bring the car back, to make it new once again, and I mean, it wasn't just paint the car and do the interior, but to take it down to nothing in the engine with, by the way, the original engine builder for that particular engine who built it the first time around.
Still
with
really
Porsche. Yeah. Still with Porsche.
So you got a second go at it, huh?
He had a second go at it. Yeah. And of course, we have the only Carrera GT V10 engine run stand in the world.
Oh, wow.
Was at Weissau. And of course, it made its transfer over to Porsche Classic. And so we have that ability as well.
So the stars are aligning,
That's really
perfectly.
Cool.
Yeah. So the car was made new again in the specification that he would want. Now, we don't modify and re-engineer in that sense.
Yeah.
It is being made new again. Obviously, the tire specifications have been updated in time, so there's a new N-rated tire for that car. And so that type of change is put into it. But to be able to give a new Carrera GT again, along with the paperwork that when that car goes into any dealership anywhere in the world, and they put that serial number in, we'll be able to see in our system that it started its first life as a GT Silver example, and now it's oak green metallic.
That's incredible.
So it's completely documented.
Yeah.
And that idea was born here.
Now, was that something that was kind of talked about, and then we had to see if that was something you could deliver on, or was it one of those you knew you could deliver on it, and you wanted to see what the client wanted to do? Like, how was that like?
It was a lunch conversation. I mean, we were just
so there was like, let's just see. Yeah. So you're just kind of like, well, let's see what we can do.
Yeah. It's like if you're sitting here talking to me and you said, I want a 996 GT3, right? And you found one that is a mostly track car, and it's been converted over, right? But you want to have it back to a showroom example. And while we're doing it, why don't we change the color? And,
and you're like, let's do that. So that's great.
Yeah.
And I know you kind of gave us the Cliff Note version, but I just kind of want to touch on some of the highlights of that car because it's so special. Just the man hours on the carbon fiber polishing, right?
That's the thing that amazes me every time.
Incredible.
Before and after.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes if the car's exposed to the UV rays,
the yellow effect
on the clear. Yeah. So in this case, because we had the car down to the tub, we're able to look at that and then go to work on it. And so imagine you're this craftsperson who gets the charge to remove the clear, which requires like a wet sanding to do, right? But you have to take it down just to the level where you remove the clear and you don't touch the carbon fiber weave.
Yeah.
Right? And so, no pressure.
Yeah, millimeters, right? You're like, this is all you have to like mess with.
Right.
And you want to preserve the original. Like you said, we could have just put new carbon fiber in there and just been done with it. But we wanted to keep all the original stuff with the car, right?
Yeah.
And I just find that to be amazing. Like, the detail that went into that. And then on top of that, the process with the wheels too. Could you talk a little bit about that? What you guys had to the plating?
Yeah, the wheels. Now, of course, they are Carrera GT wheels. And again, we don't really change or deviate from that because there really was no option in a different wheel for that car. Of course, center lug on the car itself. Because in the case of a restoration and in the recommission, we do try to preserve as much of the original car as possible and only replace where it's absolutely necessary. So in the case of the wheels, he was inspired by a traditional color combination, and the same was true. Loved the wheels that were on the Martini 935. If you remember the BBS wheels with the bright trim around the outside and the gold finish in the middle, just loved the way that looked and thought that would work really well with the oak green metallic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the trouble, of course, is that the wheels on a Carrera GT are magnesium.
Exactly.
And you can't...
Nothing wants to stick to them.
So they're lightweight.
That's right. So there was a lot of research and development that went into getting that process where the actual silver could be put on the wheels, so that it would have not only the right look to it that we were going for, but also the right usability, if you will. Needless to say, as far as going out in the shopping center watching curbs, you do need to be very careful about that. But in the end, we ultimately ended up with two sets of wheels. One that you saw and one that you haven't seen yet.
Okay.
The car will be showing soon with its driving set of wheels, if you will, right? So when you go up to the mountains and have fun with the car.
The usable wheels and then the show wheels.
Right.
Okay.
So we've used the finish from the light gold finish that is on the GT2 RS wheels.
Oh, I was going to say, like that really light.
Works,
I bet that's beautiful.
Works amazingly well with the oak green metallic,
Yeah.
So one gives you sort of a real motorsport look, and the other one is more of a concept car look.
Nice.
Which is amazing that car still looks new today from the design.
Yeah.
Do you recall from start to finish, ballpark? Obviously, we're not going to handcuff you to like perfect dates on it, but how long from when that thing entered in here and before it was finished? Do you have any kind of idea of like what that process took on there?
That particular one, about a year and a half.
Okay.
And
that's not bad at all, actually, though. I mean, that's for
the man hours that we know you spent in it.
The total breakdown and then paint change and then all the stuff you guys did to it. I mean, that's pretty quick turnaround time. I mean, essentially, you guys, built another car.
Yeah, I'm going to say that's probably not normal, though.
Yeah.
With the process that we have in place now, realistically, probably going to want to look at more time in that now as we go on and do more. And there is no goal as far as the numbers concerned. We think
just the answers do it right.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. And so from a time, they will vary from car to car because you're not starting with a new car. You're not on a production line that way. But as we look at the interest that's out there for that, and the amount of time that it takes to do the cars, it'll take a while. And I don't think we'll be celebrating any big numbers of these cars that have been recommissioned.
Yeah, right.
But again, it's an experience. So you're involved with the factory on this. You go between here in Atlanta and to Stuttgart, and you visit in various stages and seeing the process happen. And so the owner is very much part of that.
Yeah.
And so when we had the engine out, for example, and he was there and able to see that, you start to get ideas about what you can do. And so he came up with a few ideas. Well, is it possible to polish this? And what about painting that to match the emblem on the back? Can we do that in light gold as well? And sure enough, we can. So, you're involved in the design process as well, and with the people who are building the car.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
So the connection with the car becomes even greater.
Yeah,
you had to see it from the beginning.
Yeah, where he's sidelined to exactly what's happening, and that's I mean, very rare.
I mean, you wouldn't really have that chance even when you bought the first time.
That's true.
Yeah, without doubt. I mean, as you know, with Porsche exclusive manufacturer today, there's a lot that you can do when you're involved with your dealer in the order. And so, you can have that involvement, but for sure, again, we're talking very small number of folks that will have the time and the opportunity to get that involved. But we do have that experience as part of what we do with Classic Factory Restoration.
Yeah. I just love it as an enthusiast how Porsche has involved itself into the Classic division, and they've seen how these enthusiasts want to be involved, and they want their cars either recommissioned or redone or totally restoration, as we discussed earlier. I just think it's nice for them to see the need and the want is there.
I mean, with the more than 70% of cars on the road, you got to take care of them if you want to keep that number up.
Yeah, exactly. I just think it's a nice option to have that in-house and to have that, what we talked about before. So let's circle back a little bit so the audience can kind of understand a little bit now. You can't bring a 964 in here to get recommissioned, correct? It's more going to be probably a late model car, as we discussed before, right? We think that makes
most sense.
Yeah.
That a recommissioning idea is more likely going to be a late model car. So when you get into the 986s, 996s, and the not too far down the road 997s, right, Aaron, your car? Yeah, right. So as we get into the later model cars, since they're less likely to be barn finds, and even what we were talking about with the GT3 and the 996, a lot of those cars, 04s, 05s, were driven on the street and then eventually found their way into track days.
Yes.
And then start to get heavily modified. So I could see the potential in the future for someone coming in with a car like that and saying, I want to make this like it just came out of the factory again. And
do maybe like a PTS color on it that might have not been when it came out. This was a silver car, but I like ruby stone, or I want to do mint green or something funky like that. And
that makes sense.
You could do all that here.
Whereas, if you have a 964 or you have a 80s turbo like this one over here, those cars, they really are more of a restoration at that point. They've been around longer.
Yeah. That makes sense too, though, right? As opposed to, because then the onion gets really deep when you start going back to that, right? How many people have touched it? How many independents? We kind of discussed offline a little bit too. Is this actually factory what they did here? Was this an option? Because there were so many things that we don't know, and then now it makes the job of you guys hunting something down really difficult to say this is or this isn't. And that then you run into, as opposed to something maybe late model, you have a 2004 Turbo S or something, and you want to bring it in here and bring it all the way back and do a funky color on it or something like that, right?
Well, for sure. I mean, as time goes on, the computer technology gets better, and the record keeping of what's there from the 2000s and 2010s,
that's probably
obviously
a
lot better than what it was. Yeah, for sure. Because in some cases, you go back to the 50s and 60s. I mean, it's all handwritten and transferred, and so sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. But it is one of the benefits that we have in working on these projects is we can go back and take a look and say, what was the interior. Some cases, the carpet's different from the headliner to the door panels to the seat material, and of course, from a supplier standpoint, where we can work with the original suppliers, we can go back to them with that. So a lot of that knowledge
that's nice.
is
to
all
be able
there.
to go back to maybe who produced that part at that
really
point.
Can't get any more OEM than that.
Yeah, that's a. I mean,
the Fuchs wheels that we do now are they're Fuchs wheels. They were made by the same company. They also happen to make the wheels of the new cars.
Okay.
A lot of people, of course, know that name.
Yeah, exactly.
With
right.
the iconic design, but the fact is, the good majority of the wheels on most of our cars are produced by them.
Oh, nice. And now, as far as restoration goes, you can go all the way back. We have a lovely 356 behind us. You guys could do something all the way back to that era, right? And do that from ground up, if that's what the customer wants.
Absolutely. We have a 56 coupe right now that's going through that full restoration that was at Rennsport that folks might remember from inside the Classic
one.
building.
Yeah.
This is its differential right here.
Right there.
Its rear end is right there on the stand waiting for the
showing
mechanical.
us its rear end.
Yeah,
huh?
right. While the body and interior are in Germany and the engine's sitting right over here. And the black car behind us, its engine is getting a full engine restoration only.
Okay.
And that's in the unit room right now. So we won't do a full restoration on that car because it's more of a driving.
Okay.
And again, that all starts with making sure the foundation is solid to begin with, because you obviously don't want to put a new engine into a less than solid foundation.
Absolutely.
So once that checks out, then we can do the mechanical part.
Okay.
So between you and Stuttgart, is it more Stuttgart's more body stuff, paint, and then you guys are suspension, motor work? Is that the split between that?
Given the capacity that we have right now and the space that you see here, that allows us to do the majority of the mechanical work. Obviously, when we're doing body, if there's slight issues and things that can be taken care of, obviously with Porsche-approved collision centers, we can take care of smaller minor needs here. But this car, the 911S next to us here, as I showed you earlier, it's amazing what you can do with paint correction. I mean,
absolutely,
this car doesn't need to be repainted.
Yeah.
It can be corrected now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So, and I'm glad you brought up as far as like you guys kind of do the diagnosis. So can you walk us in, if somebody wants to come in and wants to do something here as far as their car and they're not sure what they want to do you guys kind of almost how a patient goes into a doctor's office and you look at the car and you're like, let us diagnose what's going on with your car first, and then let's go game plan what we can do or can't do. Is that how it goes? Absolutely, it does. It starts either with a phone call or an email or a visit at one of the many events that we do. And then from there you build the relationship and say, well, I have this white turbo, for example, that's behind us. And this starts out as a conversation and say, well, I think that the body's okay, but obviously it's not running. It hasn't run in 10 years. That type of story. And so we talk about it at a very high level, about what we think it may need. And then it starts with an exchange of photos. You take a little bit closer look at that, but that only can tell you so much. Yeah. And that's really just, again, very high-level discussion. Because at that point, then you have to make the time and the appointment. In this case, it doesn't run, send the car in. Yeah, you got to ship the car at that point, right? Right, so the car comes in. You have to receive the car, and then it takes a spot in here, and you guys are pushing it around. And you do the walk around the car so that the technicians look at everything. And we have extensive paperwork that establishes the baseline of what the car is right now. And from that, you have a prescription of what do you want to do, how far do you want to go into this, because you can start with that, but you just continually funnel this down until you get to the end of the project, because what we think we have just looking at on the outside, as you start to take it apart and get in there, it could be better than you thought, or it could be worse than you thought.
And or it could be it's the better. That's what
or it could be just fine too in that respect, what you thought. So anything's possible in that respect. But you just continue to refine that down, and that requires constant communication with the owner, with the customer of the car, to determine that. And it's an ongoing process that really doesn't end until the car is being loaded in the trailer, finished, and on its way back home. And even after that, tuning and conversation. I would say, I guess, thank you for that explanation, because then your intimacy with the client is probably way bigger than almost at any level, throughout, the Porsche line. Not saying one's better than the other, but just saying the level of intimacy, and communication that has to occur between you and the client is second to none, probably, because you're like, okay, well, here's the deal. This is where your car is at, and it's almost kind of one of those situations you tell us where you want to go with this, and I'll tell you what that's probably going to look like. So yeah, no doubt. And we recognize the time that it takes to develop that, and that's why we have Classic partners, because they realize that it becomes the responsibility and the desire of the Classic partner to recognize that they'll have to give the time as well to have that type of conversation, because these cars require that. The newer cars, not so much, because you come in, it's relatively, it's new, and here's a loaner car while we figure this out. In the case of these cars, there is definitely a lot of back and forth, and it's time consuming. And so a classic partner definitely raises their hand and says, we're willing to have that dialogue, take that time, have part of that process here as well. And so, yeah, it's definitely a way of going about the relationship in the business that's taken very seriously.
I'm glad you brought that up, because there is quite a bit of vetting process when you guys select a Porsche Classic partner, isn't there? When you decide, okay, I think that you guys have the culture, you guys have the right mindset. Not saying like you personally, but when they make that decision to wave the wand and basically knight somebody as one of those, So when that happens, is it a similar makeup to what this looks like in here when those other centers open, or when they've been deemed? Does it kind of have this same kind of makeup and outlay that this kind of current setup is right here?
It's the standard for it.
Yeah, no, it's going to vary from dealership to dealership, and I'm not actually involved in that part of the process, but having just been together like we were up in Chicago, I had a chance to visit Porsche Napleton Westmont, and they're a classic partner. And they have a whole section of their beautiful shop. I don't know if you've been in their new building. I
haven't.
They've been in there about a year, and the facility is absolutely beautiful. And so they have a whole section of the shop that is dedicated just to that, and it's probably close to about this size.
Okay.
It's laid out a little bit differently. But yeah, they're very dedicated to it, because it also is in through the parts end of it as well, because that is really the majority of what the Porsche Classic program is about, is the genuine parts to keep that 70% or more of cars with the parts they need so they can be used and driven on the road. That's the driving factor behind all of this. And so their parts department has to be very involved in that. They're involved with Porsche on it as well, because they have the ability, when they search for a part, when they go into, we call it the PET 2 catalog. That's the system that we have where all the parts are listed. You put the VIN number in and you see what you need, and the diagrams are there so that you can see exactly the part number. And one of the first questions that when we look something up is, does this need to be in the catalog? Yes or no? It's a real simple, and it's 100% hit every time. It goes directly back to Germany. So if a customer, for example, were to want a part for their car that they can't seem to find, they really need to contact a classic partner or an authorized dealer. Any authorized Porsche dealer can look into that system as well and find the parts and get this type of response back, because that is what prioritizes the work that goes into figuring out what the almost 300 parts are or should be that we reproduce or add to the catalog every year.
Okay.
So right now there's over 52,000 parts that are in that catalog, and every year they add almost 300 more to it. So how do you figure out what the priorities are? And when it's worked through the system that way, we get a much better input to learn.
Yeah. I remember you and I talked a little bit about Rennsport, at Rennsport, about the process, and talked about how difficult it is for a part to actually show up, right? Like, and you described it so well. And can you talk to the audience a little bit about that? Because I didn't know that before you told me that whole conversation of, I had no idea it was that challenging for a part that you would think would be so simple to be made to actually be out there to be used.
Right, and nowadays with 3D printing, everybody thinks, right, you just, how problem is this?
Yeah, what's the problem? You got a 3D printer, just make the thing.
Put it right out there, right, but it's still Porsche, right? So it still has to have its performance, its longevity, the endurance, everything that you expect of it, even if it is just a plastic grommet or whatever that part may be, whether it is done by 3D printing or any other method. There is a process, once we determine what the part should be, to go through and, of course, find the vendors, if we don't have the original, find the vendors that have the ability and the willingness to bid on the project. Right? You determine what all that is, then you have to prototype it, and then from there you have to test it, and then from there it has to be produced.
Yeah.
And then finally you're on your way.
It's incredible.
Easy
It can take, yeah. I mean, it easily can.
You made it sound very simple, but it could be a very, very long process. Correct?
Yeah, most cases it's at least a year, and that's why there's so much work going on around that to keep that pipeline full.
Exactly.
But it could be worse. It could be never. So
that's also a good point that you bring up, because it could never happen, and people are like, "Wow, this is unattainium. I can never find this." But which leads me to my next question: if somebody brings in, for example, a Pre-A 356, and the parts, they want to do a full restoration, and it needs, I don't know, we'll just make something up, let's say beehives or something like for the rear tail lights, and you guys can't find anything like that. What's the backup call, or what ends up happening in that situation? I'm not saying, I don't know if it's ever happened, but like, what's the protocol on something like that when somebody wants a full restoration? Is it one of those things of, okay, well, let's try to reuse what we have and make it the best we can and tell the client that's what it's going to be, and we can't find something new, or NOS, or how does that work?
Well, obviously, there are times when that happens, and it doesn't just have to be the full restoration. It can be on an engine, and there's a certain part, let's say, that might not be available. We do have a special procurement process that efforts can be made to find the part. So if a Classic partner is inquiring about it, or we're doing it here, there is a process that we have to handle to try and make sure that it isn't somewhere. That it isn't in a warehouse somewhere that we just maybe
hit the network and like, hey guys, here's what we're looking for. Where is it?
There's a lot that goes
some
into
warehouse that's just collecting dust somewhere that, they deal everything still in pen and paper and it's not data logged.
It says here we have one.
Yeah, for sure. So, that's the first thing that happens is you make sure you exhaust every opportunity that you have internally to do that. You might have to refinish what is already there. We again try to preserve as much as possible, and only replace where it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
In some cases, if you have to refinish what's there, then without question, this is where that ongoing conversation with the owner is so key, because they have to know. They have to know, and this is all, of course, documented, because some things just aren't remanufactured yet, and are not available. Yeah,
that's true. And I was just curious. Thank you for explaining that, because you know how it is. Some of this stuff is, even if you're not looking for a restoration, even if you're just a do-it-yourselfer kind of person, and you've been looking for the part, you know how it is. 10, 15 years I've been looking for this cigarette ashtray for the car, and I have a Pre-A car, and the button fell off of it, and I've been looking for it, and I live in LA, and you would think I'd be able to find it, and you still can't find it. So I think that's pretty interesting. So as far as, let's transition a little bit. So your car, we talked a little bit about it when it was coming, when it got done, and not to sound too redundant about it. So when your car was brought in, I'm assuming the same kind of processes went through, right?
You emailed yourself, right?
Yeah.
Back and forth.
I did.
Actually, you're going through the looking at it. You're like, I think I'm okay. I don't know if I need repaint or.
Yeah, right. It's the car does. I like the fact that the car isn't perfect on the outside for me, because I do like to drive it. And the majority of what we do, I have to say, we do these cars so they can be driven. We're not really in the business of
concourse is not the style.
Not trying to make a museum piece.
Right. I mean, the cars they were built to be driven in the first place, and they're built to be driven now. And I think I've talked before about the concept of supersession of parts. When something can be done a better way, and it's already been superseded in the part, then that's what's going to go in. So I think I've used the sunroof track as an example in the 911, because you can fit the later version from the 993 into one of these G model cars, let's say, and they don't have the fail that might have. So that's the supersession for it. That's what should go in the car. Now, if you're taking it to a concours show, that might be an issue if that show judges that way. Not every show judges like that.
That's true. Very true.
So this is why it's important also to know what is the owner's goal with that car when they leave here. What are they planning to do with it? And so that's, again, why it's so important to have these conversations.
Communication.
Right.
Was there any parts that you couldn't find for your car, or something did you have a hard time finding?
No, fortunately, and again, we were able to refinish most everything. So that's the key. That's one of the things that does separate what we do here. Is you could just rebuild an engine, make it run like new, and put it back in the car. But part of what we do is the visuals of it. It has to look like new too. So the plating and everything that we do.
Okay.
Cleaning. We spend a lot of time taking apart so as not to destroy something, and then a lot of time cleaning it. Almost like that Carrera GT carbon fiber, where you just, yes, you could have put a new carrier piece in that, but no, it needs to be the original. So that's the time-consuming aspect that we spend
Was there anything that popped up on your car that was kind of like, oh, gee whiz, or wow, that didn't expect anything like that when you guys were going through? I know you guys did an engine rebuild. Was there anything that kind of popped up that surprised you, or positively or negatively?
I mean, at 64,000 miles, you could question, did it really need to be restored like I did it?
Yeah.
Probably not. But it had a broken head stud, so we were going to have to take it down anyway and do it. And since the opportunity was here, and as I pointed out in Chicago, the work was kind of done in between the other customer cars. But that said, I waited my turn.
Yeah.
It took quite a while, but it was worth it. The car's going to stay with me for a long time, so it was worth the wait.
I remember you talking about how special that car actually was, and talking about that story, and thank you for sharing that. So let's get to the staff that actually works here. Like, how many people, are working in this division, in this area, and putting hands on cars, and what's that staff look like?
There are 5 that are on both sides here that work together on the project. Jack and Kellen are the 2 specialists that we have on the Classic side.
Okay.
Tom, Chris, and Tommy are also involved, and so we're able to, depending on what we're doing, able to work as a team to keep that moving along and to keep the quality where it needs to be. Jack will celebrate his 50th year as a Porsche technician next year.
Wow,
so,
some tenure right there.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That is a brain full of knowledge, I bet.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Kellen will probably be celebrating 20 or 22, right in that.
Some
range.
higher tenure right there.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So
he started very early too, just like Jack did. Yeah.
Nice. So as far as so just like your vetting process and making sure the cars are right, and the dealerships, I'm sure that goes along with the personnel that are in here too.
Yeah.
Like, how does that look like? Does it go from somebody who's maybe worked on these cars, like you said, it has all that prior knowledge, maybe when these cars were new, or not even at least new, but they were continuously being serviced at the dealership before they went to independence and they started to disappear at a frequency? Do you guys look for somebody like that has that kind of background, or what does that look like?
Are you talking about from a technical
From
side?
a tech spot, yeah.
Well, look at they're both Jack and Kellen have Porsche dealership background and training, but you look at DJ, our client service specialist. Not only did he work in Porsche service lane, interacting with customers, all the communication like we've talked about, but he's basically born into the brand, as I like to say, because his father has been a long-time after-sales manager, looking over the regions here in the United States for the technical care of the cars. And he was born into that family, so I don't know if he had any choice when it came to working with Porsche.
It didn't matter, huh?
But he's definitely, it's in his veins. And so his ability to talk to the customers and the owners of the cars to understand what the issues are, what they want to do, that ability is just outstanding. And so he's the technical person from that end of it. I'm certainly not. That's not my background on the technical side. He is. And then we have Zach on the parts side of it, who just, he loves to find the things that you're not supposed to be able to find. The mysteries that are in these cars.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about some of the build pieces and what have you that are on it. Is that factory, or is that something?
He's the treasure hunter.
Right, right. And so he's just, again, everybody that does their part in this is so dedicated to it that's really what makes this kind of magical come together so well.
Yeah. Teamwork. Yeah, that's awesome. Now, thank you so much for sharing all that. And so let's talk about the facility as a whole, right? What a great facility, Porsche Experience Center, Atlanta. And so you guys host a lot of events here, Rare Shades, other events that you guys have. And like you said, that we're here for race weekend. The team was here earlier today.
Been a busy day.
Yeah. And I think it's great in the sense of, obviously celebrating a facility like this and like what's all involved in it, but it's also a center for all of us to come to, right? Like for the enthusiasts to come and talk shop and see the displays and see the history and almost kind of feel like you're in the halls, right? Like you're there, you're hanging out, you're rubbing elbows, you're part of it, you're in the mix, right? Like this is your home essentially, right? So what a great atmosphere, right?
Boy, to come to it every day is a blessing and an honor for sure. It is a magical place. as you pointed out, and in such a short time already. Next year will be 5 years.
I know.
Right? Celebrating the 5th anniversary of the PEC Atlanta. And then shortly after that was LA. So these experience centers, I mean, when you think they were first announced about 10 years ago, the property here, this would come together. And to see what's happened and the number of visitors that we get through here on an annual basis, not only from just coming out to drive a car or be part of a program like that, but business to business that happens in here. There's the meetings that happen. We've had wedding. We've had engagements.
That's incredible.
Movie production, fashion shows.
That's incredible.
Auction.
Yeah.
Right? We've had a lot of events in here, dealer launches and training programs. It's just been an exciting place to be a part of. And it's really unique because as an auto manufacturer, for our customers and friends, enthusiasts of the brands, to have a place to come and visit that actually interacts with the business of it, that is, I don't know of too many places that are like that, where you can actually drive on our test track. Yeah. Right?
Exactly.
And it's not Epcot Center, so
exactly right. Where the secret sauce
That's true.
all happens at the same place, and it's an amazing place. It really is. And there's kind of a feel when you're here too. I every time I come here, I'm not saying that just because I'm here, but it's just there's something different in the air when you're here. And I know everybody that I'm friends with that's enthusiast, like it travels for work. Anytime they are in Atlanta, they always come by.
Yep.
Yeah.
They always pop by, and I think it's almost kind of tradition. I do the same thing. I think everybody that I know, if you're in the area, you kind of stop in.
That's it. And of course, that's intentional. I mean, we're right next to the world's friendliest, most visited airport. Right?
Yeah.
I won't use the word busy, but it's So that's we get a lot of visitors too. That folks that want to come over, that they've got 4 hours to wait or 5 hours.
Exactly.
That happens.
Exactly.
Don't mind going through line again. That do that. And so and of course, Restaurant 356 we talked about earlier.
Absolutely.
You can go on Open Table and make a reservation so folks come in for lunch and dinner. And of course, we keep the environment changing all the time with the exhibits and the Heritage Gallery and what you see.
Cool.
Yeah, well, that's an outstanding thing too. You're always changing the visual scenery, it makes you want to come again, right? Like what's
keeping up with the same way the museums.
Yeah, what else is there this time?
Well, and let's not forget too, the model line is ever changing.
Yes.
And so which means we have to change the pictures all the time in the but the cars that are here, the 992 as you saw earlier, starting to make its way into the fleet now. And we will always keep the latest models in the fleet. Yeah. And right now that number is around 75 of total cars when people go online and make their reservations to drive. So if you're just an enthusiast and you're reading about the 992 and you want to know what that's like, you don't have to just read about it in a car magazine, where you don't have to just watch the YouTube review.
Exactly.
You can, you guys do the review and then come out and try it for yourself here.
Listen to us and say, go drive it.
Right. Yep.
You need to go drive it. And this is where you should drive it.
You can do that.
Yeah. And also, with a talented person in the passenger seat with you.
Always helps,
which is just paramount. I think that's really not talked about enough, in my personal opinion, because I think the personnel who work here that are on the track, they're so great, they're so friendly, they're just great people, and they love it just like everybody else. And for somebody who's maybe never done anything like that before, I think it truly is. It sounds cliche, but it is an experience. It's such a great experience.
You're right. Every car that's out there has an instructor in the passenger seat. It's not a lead follow. It's not a racing school, so there's no real intimidation factor in that sense. You go out, and with the instructor next to you, you focus on what you want to focus on. If you want to work on your drifting skills on the wet circle out there and really, you could do that for the whole hour and a half of your drive time if you want to. If you want to mix it up, you can do that too. And that's really what they're there to help you do, is become a better driver and experience the car the best way you can. All one-on-one instruction.
Yeah. And then not to mention, obviously you can take delivery of a car here as well, right?
That's right.
That's right. And all the things.
Yeah, so get your PTS 992, get it delivered here, and then go spend some time on the track. Like what a day that'd be, right?
No, it is. We've been a part of quite a few of those days. Now, we haven't. I think we're going to be coming up. We did the math on this not long ago. When we'll do our 1,000th delivery, and I think we're going to be within about maybe a year and a half's time.
That's incredible.
That happens, yeah.
That's pretty incredible. So you mentioned you're coming on the 5-year anniversary. Not to spoil anything, and obviously not to get any details, but is there something? I'm sure there's something going to happen for that, right? That day's not going to come and go without some type of get together or some type of little.
Good point. I'm sure there'll be something fun. The events team continues to raise the bar on what they like to do as far as creating surprise events. So, which is another reason why you need to go on the website often and check that out at PorscheDriving.com and see what's up at the PECs. And of course, on their Facebook page, they announce a lot of things there too. So social media, as you know, is big.
Yeah.
Right. So that's
Absolutely.
how they get the word out about that. But yeah, we're also next year celebrating 20 years of the Porsche track experience. And so you look back on everything that Porsche as a company does to educate drivers about the cars and the human stories that are around that. Because how many people have had that experience? I mean, having sold the cars back in the early 2000s, I remember a lot of folks going and doing that at Road Atlanta when we had the school there, then when Barber Motorsports Park opened, right, and then the experience centers. So there's a lot of story around that as well, and I think you'll see some things come out of that because there's the human story, like you do with your show.
Yeah.
That's really where people can start to connect on their own experience.
Yeah. I think Porsche as a whole does a really good job of that as well. Like, they're really in tuned with the enthusiast to be able to tell the human story of like why Porsche means so much. And there's such a rich history behind Porsche with so many individuals, not just one, but there's so many people who do so many things outside of the main brand, but almost kind of adjacent to it, as far as, maybe photography or video or journalism, and is celebrating the brand. But and we talked about this a little bit earlier, how Porsche is very receptive to that as far as, hey, we can appreciate what you're doing as well, and we thank you for that. I think that's such a great relationship, and it shows how there's growth there between the two brand, areas.
Yeah, look at Rennsport. I mean, that was such a great event.
Yes.
82,000 friends show up for that one, and I mean, it's just amazing.
Just a couple people.
It was a big race party, right? That's what we talked about. It was like it's a 5-day race party essentially.
I was 4. Don't suggest
Okay.
5. 'Cause it was,
Yeah, 4. Sorry.
6 days,
oh
7
boy,
days.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was a long week. But
Well, I
my
think that
gosh.
was the joke. That's why I said that. Like, when were people saying that like last year? Like, what is it going to be 5? Is it going to be 5 days next time?
You got to raise the bar.
Yeah.
Wow.
Start
Yeah.
reserving your place in Monterey now because it's going to be booked out for a long time, right? So, yeah, I mean, just as a brand, I know we're celebrating because obviously we are in love with the brand, but and if you're listening, you must be in love as well, or hopefully you are, or you're getting yourself educated. But it really is, it's a community, and I think every once in a while, I don't want to touch on it too much, but you meet somebody who maybe has a stereotype or a stigma about the brand, right? Like, those guys are, all the sayings that go along with Porsche, and they're like, but they don't know the actual history. They don't know the relationships. They don't know. They just know what they've heard from other people.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things what we're doing is we're trying to break down those barriers, right? Like, and we're showing people that it's actually a real community.
It's very approachable.
It's not one of those things where people think that, oh, well, I can't talk to you because you have a Porsche. And it's like, it's the exact opposite. And we've been telling people that for a long time. And I think it's starting to, maybe people are starting to figure that out. Do you kind of agree to that?
Absolutely. We were having a conversation with another fellow this morning as we were walking through the Heritage Gallery, and there you have the 914 exhibit, 50th anniversary of the 914. And on the other side of the hall, you have the Carrera GT, right? And you just, if you look at the, now the 914 values are starting to come up, but the 914 is a very approachable, collectible car, classic car that if somebody wants to enjoy, you can still go out there and do that. And you look at the 996s and the 986s and the Boxsters and 911s of that era. Look at how the 964 has turned. That changed around. Everything finds its way eventually, it seems like. But
I agree.
What I love about the brand is that when you go to an event like Rennsport, it's all there, right? And you're all welcome. And
and everything's well represented.
Absolutely. And the books that are out there, the magazines that you read and you see, it's usually a really good spread because it's so different. It's the Porsche principle applied to different layouts: front engine, rear transaxle, mid-engine, rear engine, hybrid, gas, electrics.
Yeah. And I think we talked earlier too, and I think it was a great point that we discussed. If you're an enthusiast of Porsche, you're an enthusiast of all lines, not just one. And I think that describes a real enthusiast, and not saying that to be negative. I'm saying, like, love all of them. Like, because they're all special in their own right. Like, if you look at almost kind of the purpose behind, and you do your history behind this specific car and what it was built to do, and then you start to see, you're like, oh, and now the light bulb goes off, and now you're like, okay, I know why you exist now, and now I know why you exist, and you start to appreciate those things for what we're meant to do.
Right. We did an event out in L.A. recently, well, after I left Chicago, as a matter of fact, and it was to celebrate the 914 on September 14th.
Yeah.
And the specialists, the people that were there around that model, are so knowledgeable about that. I love the sub-brand element that we have. And then here, we had a 928 event. It wasn't on 928, but it was actually a month or two earlier than that. And I was amazed at the number of people and cars that showed up for the 928.
Yeah.
And upstairs where we did Rare Shades last year, in the same area, we had about 60 928s, and some of the best examples from the
928s
that have come from all over to be here.
I think I saw you on a YouTube thing or something like that, talking and
did.
like narrating, right? That was excellent.
It was amazing, the passion around that model. But you're right, they're like branches off of the Porsche tree. And that's one of the things that I love about the brand, is that there's so many ways. I think what you said it earlier, somebody said to you, well, don't you run out of things to talk about just focusing on Porsche?
Yeah.
That's kind of funny, because, it's kind of hard to do that.
Exactly.
No, because there's branches in this.
Well, exactly. And there's so many, and then it goes back to stories. There's infinite amount of stories, and I'm talking to all of the listeners out there. You all have Porsche stories, and Aaron and I are always looking for them. Yeah. And it's not that you have to carry a big name to have a story. Like, we want to tell everyone's story, and everybody has a unique story. It's like you hear those, and you and I talked about being jealous, of other people's, like Mikhail's story, right? Like
these ownership stories.
And they're like, oh yeah, we found the car when I was 13, and now I'm like 53, and it's like, what?
Still have
you have the car this whole time? Yeah. It's like, oh, I envy that like long, monogamous relationship with that Porsche. Like, why can't I want one of those? I want to be able to. I want to be in that club.
But we go back to like that recommissioned story about the Carrera GT. What attracted you first was seeing it somewhere. And so personally, I have a 911 now, but I would actually really like to have a Boxster at some point as well, because I remember being at the Detroit Auto Show in 1993, not knowing what was under that cover. Was there covering on a press day for a newsletter of all things, and just happened to be there when they pulled the cover off the Boxster for the first time. Yeah. And now, that was 1993. Now I've owned a 97, and I've had a 99 and other various company cars and what have you since then. But there's a connection there with the Boxster, now knowing Grant Larson, who's still with the company, designed the car, having had the concept car here inside our Heritage Gallery, and really learning the whole story behind it that way. I feel a certain connection to that model. So even though you have a 911, I guess what I'm saying is there are aspirational models in every single car we've ever built, because what attracted you to it in the first place.
Exactly.
Right? And that, again, I think is really special about the Porsche brand.
And which is kind of crazy, too, because Aaron and I were discussing this because we road tripped on our way up here. And granted, it was mostly interstate, but just in our daily travels, because we daily travel around, and I'm trying to be in tune with what's out on the road. And we were discussing almost kind of late 90s, early 2000, any Porsche, like Boxster, 911, whatever, we're just not seeing a bunch of them. So
we know the productions were high.
Yeah,
so.
We knew there was a lot of them sold. So that, like we talked earlier, is a page turning. Are these starting to turn that page where you better go get them while you can? And or are we going to enter into another phase like we always do with Porsche? I mean, like for the years, like you described 964, nobody wanted it. And then that turned into a thing. Nobody wanted a mid-year 911. Then that turned into a thing. And it's like...
what is it with people in scarcity, right? When it's there, we think, I don't want that. And then as soon as it's you can't have it, I want it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. It's like, oh, I need it now, like, because they don't exist. And it's like...
Somebody brought that up. They were like, I think they said... it was like a question on some online thing that I saw that said, when you go through some of these auction sites online and you see these cars pop up that are just like, a random car from when you were a kid, and you see it's like perfect car, low mileage, and it's relatively inexpensive or whatever. You just like all of a sudden think, well, I need to have that. Like, why do I need a Rabbit diesel? Yeah,
exactly.
This has 2,000 miles on it. And it's powder blue and it's perfect.
And it's a time capsule. I need it.
Right.
Yeah. So. I gotta have this because maybe I will transform when I drive that car back to that era.
Yeah, the classic car enthusiasm for sure is there, and the cars become more special too as we drive the new cars, which are so good. You get into a car, even the 964 now, when I go and drive that, and you can relate to this, you drive the 997 and then you jump in the 964, It's so different. You're up against the windshield.
Yep.
It's very small and intimate. Your arm's right there on the door.
Exactly.
You can reach over to the other side of the car pretty much. Times change, and so they just continue to reinvent themselves as the experience that they give you, because that was true when they were new.
Yes.
But it becomes even more of a differentiator today.
I think so. I think each year it goes by, you get further and further separated away from what that was at that time period, right? And then that becomes more and more nostalgic, I think is what ends up happening.
Almost looking for imperfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the road trip experiences and things we do. I did the rally up in North Carolina recently, and I mean that was absolutely nothing to do with about the speed or the performance of the car. It was just enjoying the feel of the road, that environment with that unique vehicle around you,
and then the camaraderie it went with it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that, and I think a lot of people, and I think that's another element that we didn't really touch on, that people outside of the brand. I mean, and to be fair, how would you see it? Because you're not part of the brand, or you're just kind of on the outside, you're tap dancing in. You don't necessarily have to be an owner to have that kind of camaraderie. Like, you can come to these events, you can kind of see these people interacting, and you see somebody, maybe I saw you 6 months ago and we're car friends and we don't talk every day, but when I see you 6 months from then, it's like, hey, what's up? What's going on? And you're catching up, and you're looking at each other's cars, and how you been? And I'm great. And how's the car running? And
isn't it wonderful?
Yeah, it's an amazing thing, And
I love the community aspect of it. I really do.
Yeah.
For that point, it's like we talked about in the previous episode, where we said, we've kind of created our own holiday get-togethers around different shows.
It is
that we've created.
Exactly.
Different parts of the country.
Yeah. Exactly. It's our way to go visit places with cars.
Yeah.
Is what we've done, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
But yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I know we got a lot, we took a lot of your time today, and thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing the facility.
Absolutely.
And, we're honored to be here and to have taken the time, and to share our stories and to educate our audience of what's going on here at Porsche Classic.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity. So whether you're in Atlanta and you can come by the PEC for any of the number of the reasons, always stop by and say hello. And of course, out and about, I do have to put in a plug just to say, again, I mentioned the importance of that part. When you're looking for something, please do go through a Classic partner or an authorized dealer, so that if it doesn't exist, if what you need isn't there, we can know about it in the proper channels, so that we can do something about it, because we want that over 70% number to be even higher.
Yeah. Looking for a 95%.
Exactly.
Yeah. Did we talk about that, by the way? Did I say that what you referenced was the fact, and it's a fact that they check every year on registrations in all countries throughout the world, that over 70% of every Porsche model ever built is still registered for road use today.
Yeah.
And as I've said before, the number's probably higher, because there's a lot of cars that do run fine that are in collections that are not registered.
That aren't registered. That's a very, very good point. We know many people that have 30, 40 cars that run perfectly fine that they are not registered, correct?
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point. And I mean, another reason to get yourself into a Porsche sooner than later.
It's true.
Awesome.
Every opportunity.
Yeah. Well, on that note, guys, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right, see you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of PcarTalk. Connect with us on Instagram at PcarTalk or online at PcarTalk.com.